Hello, everyone. In the last meeting, we studied about the basic definition of economics, and you came to know about the three facts that human wants are unlimited, resources are limited, and resources may have alternative uses. Now, taking our discussion forward, and we would like to know more about the economics history before jumping to the syllabus and chapters. Economics, the word is derived from oiko and normos that we had studied earlier. But this word economics was not the right origin of the subject which you are studying today. Earlier, this subject was known as political economics, and with every sort of discoveries and more research work by the various classical, neoclassical, and Keynesian economists, uh, time to time there was a modification and addition in the definition, as well as the word from political economics it was changed to economics. Uh, in the series of countless economists, the most notable names are Mr. Adam Smith. He is popularly known as Sir Adam Smith and father of economics as well. In 1776, he introduced with political economics, and he wrote a book, An Inquiry into the Nature and the Wealth of the Nations. So there, the economics was defined as a wealth-centered subject. So that means at that time, during 1776, it was taken as a study of wealth, attainment of wealth. And generally, people who have not studied economics, they also treat economics just as a matter of money. But later, in 1890, Professor Alfred Marshall came with the welfare definition, and he added the individual centered definition. And he talked about that economics is not only about the attainment of wealth, but at the same time, it must promote welfare in our economy. What is the welfare? Welfare is that people are living a better standard of life or an ideal standard of life. There is a less gulf between, or there is a less variation between the rich and the poor people. People are not poor, people are not unemployed. So that is our welfare. We are educated, we are healthy. So that was all about the welfare in brief. Further, time to time, more researches were done, and then came Professor Robinson. And Robinson in in 1932, 1932, he mentioned economics as a scarcity definition. He gave a scarcity definition. He said that economics is the study of that how to satisfy our unlimited human wants with the limited resources. And then he introduced at that time the limitation of the natural or man-made resources around us. So this was the scarcity definition given by Robinson. And then came the final definition of economics, that was the growth and development definition given by Paul A. Samuelson in 1948. So these are the four global definitions given by the several economists, notable economists. First was the wealth definition, then welfare definition, then scarcity definition, and at the end, growth and development definition. These definitions can be accessed on Google, and we will not go in details of these definition because of the limitation of our syllabus as well. So further, if we talk about economics, then the latest addition in economics is one more definition, that is a modern definition of economics given by AC Das in 2011. So that was all about the history of economics. Now we jump to the various branches or various disciplines of economics. The study of economics is divided basically into two parts, microeconomics and macroeconomics. Uh, in recent studies, it is found that one more branch is explored, and that is Mezzo Economics. So, microeconomics and macroeconomics, what is all about? Microeconomics means the study which we make on an individual basis. That means if you want to assess the behavior of any individual, what kind of behavior here? his economic behavior, his behavior towards the allocation of his income on several goods and services. That means, in simpler terms, that suppose if you are earning 1 lakh rupees per month, then how are you allocating your income in different segments, like how much you are spending on food, how much you are spending on fuel, how much you are spending on the school fee, how much you are spending on recharge, light, etc. So this is your rational behavior. Are you really rational? Are you really logical behind your spendings? That's a question before. And then we come to the meaning of macroeconomics. Macroeconomics is that discipline of economics which studies the economy as a whole. That means it talks about the entire country or entire state or entire economy. For example, suppose our national income. So national income is a macroeconomic phenomenon, whereas unemployment or level of employment, poverty, these are the phenomena studied at society as a whole. That means those economic issues which affect the entire economy. If suppose in economy we have inflation, inflation basically means when there is a when there is a persistent rise in the general price level. So and beyond 4%, if the rise in the price level, then that is called inflation. So inflation comes for every individual. It is not that inflation will affect you and inflation will affect me. It's not going to happen. If inflation comes in India, it happens inflation or deflation or recession. These are several economic issues which we will be discussing further. Then these issues affect our society as a whole. Society here doesn't mean your own colony or your own town, but entire economy. So when we talk about those issues which affect or which influence our entire economy, we are talking about the macroeconomic phenomena. And when we talk about any individual, individual you, individual me, or a commodity could be there. If we talk about an apple, if we talk about the total production of apple in India, now here you see, you're talking about India, but you are talking about the total production in India. Okay, so you are talking only about a particular commodity, individual item, that is apple in India. So here, if you study the production of apple in entire India or production of wheat in entire India, so you are not talking about macroeconomic phenomena. It is still the microeconomic phenomena. How? Because we are talking still about an individual unit of the economy, that is apple. If you say that there's a the total production of food grains, still it is a microeconomic phenomena because you are talking only about the food grains. Now if you say that the total production of all goods and services in India, now that comes macroeconomic phenomena because it targets all the goods and services of our economy. I hope that the meaning is quite clear here of micro and macroeconomics. Still, if it troubles you, then please feel free to share your queries. Now it's the time that we come to the third recent branch, that is Mezzo Economics, and a few students academic world knows about it. In 1987, it was originated basically, and it talks about those issues which cannot be studied at an individual level, or even they cannot be studied at economy as a whole. For example, if you see that the Gulf countries which are engaged in the production of fuel, then you will find that these countries, their economy is entirely dependent on the fuel industry. But there could not be any economy where you will find only a particular industry, let it be a fuel industry. You will find that people are engaged in the agriculture activities as well. They are engaged in the banking, insurance, transportation, etc. But the core centralized pillar is the fuel economy of these Gulf countries. So here, these are the issues which cannot be called completely individual because they are helping in the majority to the economy, and they are not even representing the economy as a whole. So such issues can be studied under Mesoeconomics. Now we come to the syllabus portion. In class 9, we are given 4 chapters. The book is with me. The chapter number 1 is the story of a village, Palampur. Chapter number 2 is people as resource. Chapter number 3 says about poverty as a challenge. and chapter number 4, food security in India. So if you summarize your syllabus, then you will find that first we are beginning with a very real life touching story. That is the story of a village, Palampur. Chapter number 1 talks about an imaginary or hypothetical village, Palampur. In this chapter, if you turn pages, you will find that there's an introduction given, the definition of production is given, then you will find the social bifurcation of the people as per their economic status, as per their social status, as per their caste. Then you come to the next concept, that is organization of production. Then farming in Palampur, that how the farming is done in Palampur, what are the crops which are grown in Palampur, what are the methods for the agriculture which the people or farmers have opted. So these are the things we are going to study in farming in Palampur. Then we come to some datas or statistics. You will find some bar diagrams or table presentations. At the end, we will talk about the sustainability of land and how is land distributed between the farmers of Palampur. That means the distribution of land among the people of Palampur. Then we will find the capital required in farming, various factors of production. We will find it. And then sale of surplus farm products, then farming and non-farming activities in Palampur. So this is the very brief information about this chapter. Today we are beginning with our chapter number 1, and we come to the overview part and introduction part. The story of village Palampur. In this overview, you will find that the purpose of the story is to introduce some basic concepts relating to production, and this we do through a story of a hypothetical village called Palampur. So in this chapter, our core purpose would be talking about the production, and we will be doing it with the help of an imaginary village or hypothetical village, that is Palampur. So anywhere if you see a Palampur village in India, then please don't relate that village with it. Now, what is production? That's the number one question before us. The production, as explained earlier too, the production is the process. It's a process through which we are converting the raw material into the final goods and services. So basically, suppose if you talk about a bakery owner, so bakery owner, he requires flour in hand or he requires wheat in hand. So wheat will be converted into flour, flour could be converted into the bread, buns, etc. So this is the process of production, right? Now, if we jump to the farming activity in Palampur, farming is the main activity in Palampur, whereas several other activities such as a small scale manufacturing, dairy, transportation, etc., are carried out on a limited scale. Now, if you visit or you have visited any village earlier, you will find that the majority of the economic activities are centralized towards agriculture only in villages, in rural economies. Most of the people are engaged in the agriculture. Now, simultaneously, people are engaged in many other non-farming activities also, because it's not possible that every farmer or every person living in the village will have his own piece of land. It's not necessary that every individual in a village, he or she will definitely possess a piece of land. There could be landless laborers who work in the farms. So now the people who don't know the art of farming, or those who are not actually interested, who are quite reluctant with the farming activities, they may initiate other activities also known as non-farming activities, like shopkeeping is there, transportation is there, banking is there, financing activities are there, dairy is there. So these are some prime non-farming activities which we find in the rural economies, but at a very low scale. So in majority, people are engaged in farming, but apart from farming, we have still a scope of living a life to earn a livelihood in non-farming activities in rural areas. Further, we see that these production activities need some various types of resources. As we discussed earlier, that resources are generally of two types. the natural resources and the man-made resources. But here it would be wiser to talk about the factors of production, a very important basic to understand this chapter. See, whether you or any individual, whoever wants to initiate any production activity, if you want to start any production activity, then you require these four factors of production, without which it's impossible to initiate or carry on any production activity. So, in the series of factors of production, number one comes here land. After it, it comes labor, then capital, and at the end, human mind or entrepreneurship or entrepreneur. Now, one is the land. The land, without land, I don't think that any plant or any machinery can be installed. You cannot install a plant or any machinery in there. We require, of course, a piece of land, and it's quite understandable, practical, that without land, the production activities are not possible. As far as farming activities, it's impossible to initiate any farming activity without the land. Secondary, it comes labor. See that when you plan any production activity, then without the labor, you won't be able to carry on the production, or you cannot start the production activity without labor. You may say at the moment that we have a highly advanced system and highly machinerized system, but still, up to an extent, you will require some involvement of manual labor. Even to switch on, you require some labor. So it could be any case. We require land and labor. Then we come to the capital part. Very important part. Capital is actually divided into two further parts like fixed capital and working capital. Fixed capital, that means those capital inputs which are used for a very long period of time. Like, for example, the farmers, they purchase tractors, they use threshers, they use pump sets, etc. So these machineries or these inputs or these capital inputs are used for a very long period of time. It's not that today you are using tractor and tomorrow it will be finished. It's not possible. The life of these inputs are is very long. Other than it, these inputs generally, not all the inputs I would say, but these factors or these inputs are generally of very high value as compared to the other items. Suppose if you compare the price of any tractor or the price of pump set or the capital investment behind the threshers with any sack of what you say is a packet of sack of seeds or a sack of fertilizers, then you will find that price of the fixed inputs is comparatively very high, because the inputs which I talked about, the sack of seeds, sack of fertilizers, these are kind of our working capital which we require in day-to-day activities, in routine activities, which are used generally once and then they are exhausted, like raw material, cash in hand. These are some our examples of a working capital, without which I don't think that it's possible to initiate the production activity. And the fourth one is now the entrepreneur or human mind, the most important factor. Because, see, you may have land, you may have capital, and you may have what you call is labor. But land, labor, capital, these three inputs cannot be used by themselves. We require some rational mind behind the utilization of these three resources. So this is the human mind or the entrepreneur, that person, that individual who is undertaking the production activity, who has planned to initiate the production activity. So these are the four factors of factors. These are the four factors of production, and among all these four, the most important factor is human mind or entrepreneur. Entrepreneur, you must check the spelling in your dictionaries. Entrepreneur means any person who is ready to take risks, who takes risks of initiating any production activity. So that was a brief introduction of these four factors of production. Now we come to the introduction of the village Palampur. Palampur is well connected with neighboring villages and towns, Raiganj. A big village is 3 kilometers far from Palampur. An all-weather road connects the village to Raiganj. That means, see here, that people have a kind of a smooth system of transportation as it's a well-connecting road towards Raiganj. And further on to the nearest small town of Shahpur. So Shahpur is the nearest small town. Many kinds of transport are visible on this road, starting from bullock carts. Now, see that we are talking about here the traditional means of transportation. Nowadays, you have trucks, you have trains, you have airways, different means of transportation which are modern. But our ancient or our traditional means of transportation were like bullock carts, tongas, bogies which are actually of wood, made of wood. These wooden carts are drawn by the buffaloes. So loaded with jaggery and other commodities. Jaggery means in the regional language we call it gur. So these are all the means of transportation are used to carry the commodities which are produced in Palampur, and they are supplied because what will you do after the production of any commodity? Suppose if you have grown wheat, you have grown rice, you have produced cakes, you have produced chalks, you have produced flour. What will you do after producing it? You have to sell it further to earn some profit. And this is why the production activities are undertaken. So, after the production of crops or other commodities, these commodities are loaded in the traditional means of transportation, and then these are supplied in the nearby villages or the nearby towns with the help of a well connecting road. Now, see, other means of transportation which are used here, like motorcycles, jeeps, tractors, and trucks. So, these are some modern means of transportation, we may say, which are used by the Palampur residents. Then we come to the geographical and the social distinction. This village has about 450 families. There are 450 families we find in Palampur belonging to several different castes. So that's a natural thing that in our community we are divided into numerous castes. So people are divided. That means Palampur includes people from different background. So the 80 upper caste families own the majority of land in the village. So that is a little troublesome. That distribution of land is found to be uneven in Palampur. 80% of land holding is in the possession of, or we may say that 80 upper caste families, not 80%, but 80 upper caste families own the majority of land. So that's not good. That means it's a big gulf between the upper caste people and low caste people. Low caste people have a very less position on the land. Their houses, whose houses here? We are talking about the upper caste people. Their houses, some of them quite large, are made of brick with cement plastering. That means these people have pakka houses. The SC, that is the scheduled castes. SCs, Dalits comprise one third of the population and live in one corner of the village. So that's not a good indication of development or social harmony. We see here that in Palampur there is a kind of social distinction, and people of SC, that is a scheduled caste, Dalits, are compelled to reside in the corner or it could be outskirts of the village. And in much smaller houses, some of which are made of mud and straw. We see here that upper caste people, they are living in the pakka houses and in the center of the village. But people belonging to the SC, scheduled caste, they are living in a corner of the village and they are living in kacha houses. These are made of mud and straw. So that's not a good indication towards the standard of life they are enjoying. Most of the houses have electric connections. That means Palampur has an access to the electricity. That's a good news before us. Electricity powers all the tube wells in the fields. So Now, electricity is basically used for two purposes. One could be your domestic use, that means electricity which you are using for your household consumption, which you are using in your houses for your domestic chores. Other than it, electricity could be used for the commercial activities like in shop to operate any machinery or in farm. Uh, Maybe might be used for pump sets, operating the pump sets. So this is the general use of electricity we see in Palampur. So electricity powers all the tube wells or pump sets in the fields and is used in various types of small business. So that's a very general use of electricity we see here. Palampur has two primary schools and one high school. There is a primary health center run by the government and one private dispensary where the sick are treated. Now, what are these things indicating towards? That Palampur is not deprived of the facilities of basic facilities. Means we saw that there's an access to electricity. That means production activities are finished within a limited period of time. Because see, if you don't have the electricity, in that case, it would be very troublesome to carry on any production activity because it will consume a lot of time. With the help of electricity, with the help of machineries, our work becomes smooth. Other than it, there are schools in Palampur. So, for the basic education, for primary education, people don't need to send their children out of the village because that's a threat to their social security also. If they they have to send their children out of the village. And then it comes that there's a primary health center also. So in case of any cough, fever, cold, for some very small or general diseases, people have some sort of health facilities in their village. So if you want to enjoy a very basic life, then we are most welcomed in Palampur. Then the description, there is an asterisk mark, and the expression says that the description above shows that Palampur has fairly well developed system of roads, transportation, electricity, irrigation, school and health center. So that's a relief, that's a good indication of development in Palampur. So today we wind up our discussion here and we'll be talking more about the factors of production in our next meeting. Thank you.